welcome to Andertons TV. My name is Jack Duxbury, and this is...
Sam from SSL. How you doing?
And this is...
The BiG SiX.
Let's learn more about it. Thanks very much, Sam. Let's fist bump. Okay, we're in. Firstly, if you like what we're doing, consider subscribing. If you don't, let us know. We can learn from the hate. And there's all the chapter markers below, so if you want to stop, you don't like us talking, skip ahead. And we've got the Maltese Falcon and Oz in the room as well. So we're all here together. And I've deliberately learnt nothing about this since I saw the release a few weeks ago. Could you treat me like a punter in the shop?
Sure.
And tell me, what have we got here?
Well, I mean, BiG SiX is obviously an evolution of where we've come from with SiX, so the smaller SiX console. When we released the small SiX console, I'd say small SiX, it's not called small SiX, but the smaller SiX,
yeah.
We were looking at what would be the ultimate centerpiece for your studio in terms of what are your money channels, what do you need ins and outs, what do you need from your monitoring section. And we wanted that to be portable, so you could take it with you in hand luggage as an example, but also have it in your home studio as well as your centerpiece for plugging everything into. And the one thing about SSL that we really like doing is distilling down all of our studio heritage and legacy, so from our previous consoles, and bringing that into our newest products, but with a new twist. So that's what we did with SiX. Now, on the upside of that, with this, BiG SiX, we obviously had feedback from our users. Everyone was saying they wanted something a little bigger, maybe something that integrates with your DAW a little more seamlessly, hence the interface inside of this one. But we've kept a lot of the core aspects of what the SiX console is, and that's broken down into 3 sections. So you've got your money channels, if you will, so your recording channels.
I love that money channels.
I know, it's a coined phrase.
It is so cool. Sorry.
No, it's all good. Then you've got your stereo channels, and we're going to talk about uses for these as well.
Yeah.
One of the real important things we need to think about with recording through a console is obviously artist monitoring. So we've got a really comprehensive artist monitoring section inside of this as well, with the stereo cues. And then we also have a fully fledged monitor section as well, so for you in your control room. So we'll walk through the actual console itself, but I think before we even get to that, let's have a little bit of a chat about what is inside of it and what makes it different to other mixers out there.
Yes.
So, number one, it's our super analog circuitry. Okay, so we talk about super analog, and this was originally introduced in our 9000 series consoles, so the big studio consoles that you see in the early 90s. And super analog is a design philosophy. It's low noise, low distortion, really accurate. And that's what we put into all of these products. So SiX, BiG SiX, okay? So that circuitry and that, if you will, philosophy runs throughout to all of our products, unless we choose to put something from one of our older consoles in that adds that colour and tone. And a phrase you'll hear with SSL is you can always add colour, but you can't take it away. So if you're recording with tons of colour and you come to the mix and you push those faders up and think, oh, I need to remove that, you've already committed it. You can do that as a creative choice, but with the super analog circuitry, it's about being as pure as possible and adding colour where you need it. So that's what's inside of this. When it comes down to the actual console itself, like I said, we should probably talk about the recording channels first, if you will. So the essentially the channels that have the microphone inputs and also your instrument inputs as well.
So all of these are... So how many inputs go into the interface? How many?
Well, it's a 16 I/O interface, but there's numerous ways that you can use those inputs and outputs depending on button presses. So we'll run through that in a section by section overview of the actual console itself.
That's cool.
So looking at the first 4 channels, if we start at the top, we're looking at our inputs. So we have our super analog microphone inputs, okay? So these are obviously for your microphones recording. You've got your 48 volts. You've got a high pass filter on there as well. Okay, you've got your line inputs here. And then we've also got the high impedance input. And we've matched this so it works really well with sort of passive pickups, so your guitars, your basses. And some of the comments we've really had, is, especially on SiX originally, was how it felt like when you were playing and you were monitoring straight in with a bass guitar. It felt like it was in front of you. You felt the body of the instrument and the sharpness of the instrument. So that's moved through, and we've used that input section here as well. Okay. You've obviously got your gain for your mic inputs there as you come down. The interesting button is from USB, and we'll talk about that later on. So that's how you bring audio back in to the desk after you've done your tracking side of things.
That's very exciting for me.
Okay. One of the things we've added on here is the polarity invert as well. So if you're doing multi-mic signals, you can match the phase on this, which is really nice. So obviously
You don't see that a lot on interfaces so much. That's great.
It's one of the key things you'll see on a large format desk.
Yes.
And we want this to be a piece of a large format desk in your own home.
Ooh.
So that's one of the extra things we've added on from SiX as well. Coming down, we've got the stereo cues. The stereo cues are what we would either use for artist monitoring. So they've got a level and a pan, and that's for creating artist mixes. But we've done a couple of clever things on here as well in the centre section, which we'll come on to as separate videos, I think, of how we can use these to send back into the DAW for effects or actually make a parallel bus inside of the desk as well, which is really nice. Down from that, we've got the EQ section. So we've got a 3-band EQ, so we've actually added a mid-band from the SiX. So SiX is high and low, whereas we've actually added a mid-band on this. And these are switchable between shelf and bell frequencies. And I think we'll put a diagram up for this for you. But the bells are set around the 200 hertz mark in the low frequencies and 60 hertz on the shelf. Okay, the high frequencies you're looking at 3.5K and 5K, and then you're looking at a 700 hertz mid-band there. Okay, so they're sort of broad stroke EQs. Really good for adding that shimmer and shine onto a source or adding a bit of weight into the lows, and also cleaning up or adding that sort of mid-weight boost to a snare as an example in the mid-frequency. So we'll come across and have a little listen to that in a bit. In fact, we could probably do that now on a snare and a kick if you want.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. So let's have a ride that up there. So this is a track that my colleague, Mr. Mike Banks, has recorded for us.
Thanks,
a little
Mike.
while back. Oh, look, always at the end of the track when you press the play button. That's the generic demo. Okay, so let's mute some of these down. So just looking at the kick and the snare, actually, let's take a look at that. So dropping the EQ out. So you can hear it sort of woolly.
Oh, crikey.
The snare hasn't got as much snap to it.
Yeah.
And that's broad stroke EQ there. We're adding a little weight to the kick drum, a little bit of snap to it as well, so you get that beat ahead. The snare, we're actually reducing a little bit at the lows, but adding some of that high frequency and the mid frequency as well to get more weight behind it. Okay.
I love the somewhat fixed frequencies with the choice of the belt, because same on guitar amps, I like guitar amps with no mid really. I don't want to think about it, and I reckon that some people might get freaked out about parametric stuff, but you can hear it's doing exactly what we want there.
It's that broad stroke, and as I say, when we were
non-destructive stuff.
Well, that's exactly it. And when we were looking at, let me just move this down.
Because we got plugins and stuff for like doing all the surgical stuff.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. If you want to get in surgical, that's, you know, like you say, you're notching stuff out. You definitely go into your plugs for that. But as I said, this is all about broad stroke stuff to get creative with and get hands on with. So to really get to grips with that, I'd suggest getting your hands on one and trying one, obviously.
Yeah.
But we're going to have a little bit more of a listen to it later on.
And that's
as well.
where we're a shop. You can come. We'll have this stuff in the shop in Guildford. If you're not in Guildford, fly. Or drive.
Fly. That's the first option.
Yeah, fly
Always
from
the first
Reading.
option. Helicopter or something.
I love the colours as well. It's so clear, man. It's so clear to get it.
Like I said, it's all about being able to get your hand on something quickly, and it's all in front of you. So that is the thing about having a mixer in front of you, is it's speed, and not mixing with your eyes. You're mixing with your ears.
Yes.
So something we always talk about. One of the other things that we've got on here is the one knob compressor. Okay, this was the same as in SiX, but we have changed the knee slightly on that, so it's a little less aggressive on the knee. So you'll find it sort of rises into the compression in a slightly softer way, if you will, with the knee. Again, these are broad stroke in terms of you can do very subtle compression just to take the edge off, or you can actually slam them quite hard as well if you want to. So a kick drum, again, as an example here. Let's take these out a second. So you can get that sort of clip, that snap on it, or you can do that broad sort of very slight compression there.
Now, with a one knob compressor like that, in my little pigeon brain. What's it doing with like things like gain makeup?
So auto makeup.
So it just automatically does it?
Yeah, so and SSL dynamics in channels on the big consoles even, they all have an auto makeup gain.
No
so it's taking care of
way.
that for you, yeah.
I think that's such a good feature for people, even as like if you're a super pro and you can't be bothered to be there having to set it all the time. I love that. Or for a beginner, because that's the bit, the makeup gain's the bit where I think some people struggle.
Yeah,
So
100%.
I heard that, it didn't just get louder.
No, that's exactly it. And we've, you know, with a one-knob compressor as well, how do you decide what your attacks and your releases are? So, I mean, we go from roughly 8 milliseconds to 30 milliseconds, which is source dependent really on the attack side of things, and it's a 300 millisecond release on this. So it's, it's pretty comprehensive, forgiving, if you will. Yeah, that's the best way to look at it. So the one-knob compressor is really nice, just taming slightly if you want to, but if you use it to the extreme, you can get that sort of snap and push out of it as well.
Cool, dig it.
One of the other things that is important on an analog desk is an insert point. So we've got the insert points in this, so we can use, you know, compressors, EQs, external pieces of equipment as an example. So that is part of the signal chain here. The important part as well, obviously, is the faders. So we've got the full throw faders, same as in SiX.
Right.
So, you know, being able to get that actual travel rather than a fader length being this long, you get that ability to balance nicely. You've got your mute button, and this, when muted, actually sends to a B bus. So when you go ahead, if you want to press it, you go ahead.
They are really nice and chunky.
So that mute takes it away from the main A bus, if you will, but gives you a secondary bus, which is like almost like a back bus, if you will, a B bus. So you want to send it to different places for recording and processing.
That's cool.
So one of the things that I have done with this is use that to actually take and make a drum bus, if you will, and then brought that back into the externals and mixed it in with my main mix, so processed it separately. So there's some real clever stuff you can do with that. Worthwhile mentioning the metering. One of the most important things on a desk is metering. So I've obviously got your LED segment meters here, same on your stereo channels, and a slightly larger set of segments on the master.
Yeah, I dig it.
So, you know, metering is important, and making sure you're not going back too hot. Obviously on your converters as well, that's really important. So you just want to make sure you're looking at it as a whole.
Over here, what interests me are these mono switches.
Yeah.
Which, that's how exciting my life is. But what happens if I hit mono? Because these look like they're stereo channels.
Yeah, so that will fold them down to essentially a mono.
And they'll be discrete, so it would be mono channels into my door.
Yeah, essentially it will come out the left and right into your door.
And coming back, does that mean they can be...
They will come down to a central mono, that's exactly it, yeah. That's exactly it.
So you've got actually quite a lot of channels of summing or mixed...
Yeah, summing is another thing that's really important with this, is being able to bring that digital audio that some of us consider as sterile in a way. I know we've got plugins that, you know, add colour and tone, but being able to sum in the analog world and print that back is one of the real benefits of having the analog desk in front of you, and that's why people still use big desks today. And that's basically
a push of a button, right? So when I hit these, it's coming back from my computer.
That's exactly it. So across all of the channels, and we'll look at the stereos in a second, you've got the from USB button, okay? And from USB essentially flips the input and brings the output of the door back into the channel. So you could commit this processing into the door, or you could keep it clean and bring it back in and process it in the mix.
So cool.
So you've got two ways of doing it. And that's how we're working today. So the USB-C audio interface on the back of this, one cable into my Mac.
Nice USB-C as well. Come on in the future.
I know, where the modern Mac with no other
Yeah,
USB ports.
but still, we get a lot of products in here. It shows you how up to date this is, you know, because a lot of things I get still have a big printer cable on the back, so that's cool.
Exactly. The important part as well is that you can choose where that USB out is into the computer for recording. So you've got an output from each of these channels back into the computer for recording, and you can either have it pre or post fader. So if you want to make the balance and trim into the door, you can. So that's part of the button structure here in the actual first 4 channels, and also in the stereo channels as well.
Ooh.
So we've had a little look at USBs, these main money channels, if you will. Stereo channels, let's take a look at those. So again, you've got your line inputs, and they are on the back of the console itself. And if you look at the console, you'll see that we have, and we can put a picture up of this as well, we've got all the TRS inputs and outputs on the back of this. So unlike the SiX, where we were limited in space, and it had a D-sub connector, we've managed to fit everything on TRS connectors on the back of this as well, which makes it a little easier when moving between studios and so on.
Exactly.
So if you're taking this as a piece of equipment out with you, it's worthwhile noting that the original SiX was a half rack. This is a full 19-inch rack, and we do have rack ears for it as well. So it can be
just
racked
sitting.
up.
I love that with the jacks, because the D-sub's great if you're... And if you don't know what we're talking about, they're like a weird little connector that are great for saving space, but the same for me, it looks a bit alien, and they're quite... often a la carte connectors that people have made for themselves.
Well, I mean, it's normally if you find a big studio console that you've got lots of inputs and outputs on, it's easier to use the D-sub connectors. And you'll see them on our large format consoles, so if you guys do come down to SSL, which you're welcome to, you'll see that on the back of the dualities, the AWSs and so on.
Yeah, cool.
So stereo channels, following it down, you've got your essentially your trims to the inputs as well. You've then got your stereo cues, so you have the same monitoring functionality as well there, so these can be sent off to artist mixes, or we can use them for the parallels and so on, as we talked on. We're going to look at in a bit. We also have the EQ circuit here as well.
Same EQ.
Same EQ.
That's cool.
But we have the shelving. We don't have the bell buttons on these, we just have the shelving on the high and the lows.
Right.
Okay. We have a balance control, and as you come down, you'll see we have the USB post fader there, so the USB out post fader, the mute, which also gives us access to that B bus, and across all of it, we have a PFL, so a pre-fade listen.
Cool. For all you keyboard heads out here, I mean, what a dream.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, and again, you know, my colleague Ross at SSL, who's in our marketing department, he's massively into his synths.
Yeah.
You know, bringing all that sort of stuff into
4
his...
stereo synths, or any amount of synths in here. Like, you could have 8 mono synths in there.
That's exactly it.
And then still have enough free for when your mate comes round to ruin it with guitar.
Yes, I'm a guitarist. I said yes before that.
And Talkback, can I talk about the Talkback mic? Because
Yeah, of course.
SSL, that's a bit of SSL folklore, isn't it? The
Yeah.
Talkback.
Yeah, the 80s drum sound, if you will, the LMC,
Right.
yeah. So the listen mic compressor. So you have the listen mic compressor
No.
built in as part of the Talkback circuit. Yeah.
That's that.
Yep, so this is all about heavy compression. So if you're in a studio and you've got a band separated out around the room, you can put one mic in the middle of the room, and if the drummer's over there, because we don't like him very much, and the guitarist is here, they sound a similar level when talking, and so you can hear them back in the control room. By mistake, it was found out to be the 80s drum sound with Phil Collins on the drums, but that's a story for another day. But it's in numerous of our desks and our products, and it's
cool.
in this as well. So, yeah, you can use and access that and actually record that back as well.
Oh, what a great little colour box.
Yeah.
I mean, as a Talkback thing, oh, great talk, but as a interesting creative tool, to have that's so exciting.
Yeah, well, I mean, like you say, you've got the channel compressors, you've got the listen mic compressor, and we also have the stereo bus comp in here as well.
Come on, and we're moving over there now.
We're moving over there now,
G-bus.
yeah. So we've got our channels, they're going into our master bus, and that has an insert point as well. We've got a really nice little function down here, stereo Q1 to G-comp and some to main bus. So this is how we're going to do our parallel compression in a bit, but we'll take a look at the bus compressor on its own as first. So, end of the track again.
We're perfectly in sync.
So we've got some subtle compression on this at the moment, okay? So you talked about makeup earlier on. We have makeup gain here available to us. We have sort of our standard compression settings, if you will, and our standard release settings. So we spoke to a bunch of engineers, and they were all in a similar sort of position in terms of your generic go-to bus compressor settings for attack and release.
Yeah.
We've also included in this, though, as an update, the auto release.
Oh.
Okay, so this is one of the features of the larger format SSLs, and the auto release essentially looks at the material that's coming into it, so the program material, and decides whether it should be a quick release or have a longer release over time. So the more information the compressor is getting, the longer the release will become, sort of glue it as a mix.
Killer.
I like the auto release a lot. Some people really like it.
I too. And me, whenever I've used a G-bus, I'm always got quite a slow attack.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and is that... You've got great knowledge on your... Have you fixed it? So it's a fixed attack,
Yeah,
right?
so the attack is around 30 milliseconds, if I remember correctly.
Perfect, that's the one! I only know from the UAD plugin where I flick it round.
Yeah.
That's the one!
So then it's sort of 100 milliseconds is standard.
I mean, if it was 10 minutes, I wouldn't have bought it, but that's
But then the auto-release, as I say, it's program dependent.
Brilliant.
So if you've got single hits going into it, it will have a faster.
Yeah.
If you've got more program material existing inside of it, it will hold on a little longer.
Cool.
Clever little bit of circuitry.
Can we hear it in and out?
Of course you can.
And can I slam it?
Do as you wish.
So that'd be slamming it, but then it's got quieter, I can make up the gain, right? I've squished it within an inch of its life. That's it. And we got a top 10 record, come on!
Thank you.
So thanks for letting me fiddle.
No, it's fine, go ahead. That's your master in terms of your master bus till that point, okay? We've got your bus B master here, which has got its own level control and the mute. We've also got some summing functionality into the master bus on this side as well. We talked about the artist monitoring inside of the console. So we've got the stereo Q masters over here, okay? So if you take a look, and these can feed the two separate headphone outputs we've got on this. We've got secondary headphone output on this as well.
Win.
So essentially this is a little summing matrix, and we can also choose how the USBs interact with this as well, okay? So we can actually send the Q buses out into your DAW to use in the box effects and then return them down the desk as well. And we're going to have a look at this as well in a little bit. You've got your summing matrices for both of those, Q1 and Q2, and then you have your monitor source select down here as well, okay? And these can either be from our main bus, our B bus, or externals as well, which can come off of the USB interface. The external inputs all have the TRSs up the top here as well, by the way, so into the desk. And below that, we've got our monitor selection. So we have a main set, we have an alternate set of monitors that we can access. We have a dim and a cut, and also a mono, for phase checking as well.
Jeez Louise, there's so many people that could use this.
Yeah, this can be anything from
like
a front end
hospital
through to...
radio. You know, because all these things to the podcasting.
Yeah.
Same here. If we want to do a podcast, you've got all those features, all the monitoring things, but then on the input side, and then as a posh mixer, you're hitting everything with this.
I mean, I was saying to the guys earlier on that I'm considering using this as a bit of a, essentially inside of the Mac rehearsal rig for my band, because we've got 4 talk inputs so everyone can chat to each other, and then I've got my aux box that goes into it, you know, and we have an electric drum kit, so it can all go in and out, and we can use a main stage rig and actually rehearse off of it.
Yeah, because you can send that stuff back into it to listen to.
Yeah,
Whoa.
so I'm yet to actually get a full band in front of it, but a couple of us have had a go and it works. So you can be creative with it, let's say.
Oh, cool. What else is there? Because you're going to be kind enough to show us maybe a little bit more about parallel compression as a concept and how to use this. That's all the big features, right?
Yeah, that's all the big features in there. Like I said, I think the real thing that people were asking for from SiX through to what we have, let's move that down a bit more, otherwise we're going to have...
I felt like I was in a Sweetwater video there, and I was kind of... I want to be Mitch Gallagher, and so I felt a bit
You need
Mitch
more
Gallagher.
Americana, that's all you need.
Exactly.
So it's all about that expansion of what people wanted from the smaller SiX as well. I mean, SiX in its own right, for what the product is, it's pretty fully fledged. We've just taken that to sort of what the next level would be, with some feature requests, some feedback from users, and essentially giving you the big SiX.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to ask before, because the Falcon was talking about it, how does it integrate with other... Because at the moment you've got a smash hit on your hands with the fader controller.
Yeah,
we did it with
so the UF8, yeah.
The UF8. How do you envisage that? I mean, again, you could have a UF8 and that could be controlling all the...
Yeah, so, I mean, for example, you could have a UF8 one side of it, a UC1 to the other. We haven't had a chance to look at the UC1 yet with you guys, but I think we should. But, yeah, so what I would do in that case is I would have a bunch, so let's say we had 20 tracks inside of the DAW. I would then stem those out into buses and bring them down either as stereos or monos. For example, our kick snare, a main vocal, maybe the lead guitar, because that's always important.
Yeah.
And then stem the other elements out, you know, so you might have a keys group, you might have a BVs group, and so on. And you're balancing those as your final mix at that point, okay? But what if you want to mix the individual elements? Well, then you'd use the UFA to go and balance the backing vocals inside of the DAW before it hits this. If you want that full SSL channel strip then on top of that, you would use the UC1 connecting to the SSL plugs that is then feeding into. So you've got, we're building like that studio ecosystem, if you will. I don't like using the word like that,
I work in a studio with an inline split console, and this essentially does it all.
Yeah,
it's a bit crazy.
It's your essential SSL components from all the big desks that we felt you could use in your home studio, even into, you know, smaller commercial rooms as well. You can add stuff around this to make it a bigger desk. Oh, and that's a good point. There's bus injects on this as well, so if you want to add a 6 into this, you can take the 6 outputs and take it into the master bus inject, so you have an extension of as well.
Oh, with the original 6, what a smart
as an expansion
world. And so you can throw it in the back of your car.
Yeah, 100%. I did today.
And go giggy. I'll do a gig with it and check out the price. I think it's unbelievable. Add up all the component parts that you would get. Check out the price and come to the store and touch it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the real key thing you said there is if you were to take all the individual components of this and put them together, it's much
insane.
more than the sum of the piece of this.
Even the pre's alone, if you look at how expensive SSL preamps are and EQ separately, it's I can tell you're going to kind of really destroy everyone else and stomp on top of them, which I'm up for. That's cool. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks, mate. Thanks, I appreciate it, my brother.
Have a good one.
And check out the other videos where we're going to do some nerdy stuff, right?
Yeah.
And let's see, we're at the end?
Fade in.
Yes! Americana dreams, yeah.